Beep. Okay. We are in volume of 9. See, volume 9 of the Bible story. And I am at part 1, story 4, Tears Jesus Shed. Yeah, this is the one I thought. Because I see his name right here. Lazarus. I figured it was. Okay. Part 1, story 4, Tears Jesus Shed. One day a messenger came to Jesus bringing news from Mary and Martha in Bethany. The message was very short, just like a telegram. Lord, he whom ye love is ill. That was all. It didn't it didn't even say, please come at once. The two sisters were so sure Jesus would come as soon as he could. But he didn't go at once. In fact, he didn't do anything about it. Not that he wasn't sorry for Lazarus, Mary, and Martha. No, indeed, the Bible says that he loved them. Then why did he stay around for two days before leaving? That's what the disciples wanted to know. But all he would say was that this illness of Lazarus was for the glory of God. But, wait, by and by Jesus said, our friend Lazarus sleepeth. It is fine, said the disciples. If he had gone to sleep, he will be better. Then Jesus told them plainly that Lazarus was dead. He used the word sleep because that is what death really is. It's just like going to bed one night and not waking up until someone calls you in the morning. Now they started off for Bethany, the disciples wondering how Jesus knew Lazarus was dead and they could be whether they would be in time for the funeral. They weren't. Jesus did not seem to be in in the least bit of hurry, and when they arrived in Bethany, they found that Lazarus had been buried for 4 days already. Lord, said Martha, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. No doubt she was right, and she couldn't understand why Jesus had not come when she sent for him. But now she said something that pleased Jesus very much. Even now I know that whether you ask for God, God will give you. This showed that even though she was the busy one about the house, chumbering, uh, cumbering about much serving, she loved and trusted Jesus just as much as Mary. Your brother will rise again, Jesus said tenderly. I know that he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day, Martha said. I am the resurrection and the life, said Jesus in one of the most glorious statements he ever made. He who believeth in me, though he died, yet shall he live, and whoever lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this? Yes, Lord, said Martha. I believe that you are and it stops there. And then down at the bottom it has uh, might be Mary over here at the door, and some people crying, and Martha running to Jesus at the bottom of this story. And see, this is the illustration. So you got the house and Mary at the door crying, and some other folks crying, and then Martha right here, and then the representation of Jesus and his disciples behind him. Let me get it a little closer. See, there's the Martha running, and there's very good detail. It's not my camera; it's the way the print of this book is. It's got it all offset and weird looking. Okay, let's get back to the story. Yes, Lord, said Martha, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God. What a wonderful confession. Where where's Mary? Asked Jesus. Martha went to the house and found her sister in the midst the of many mourners who were trying to comfort her. The master is here, whispered Martha, and he is calling for you. Silently, Mary arose and went with her sister. Thinking that the two women were going to the tomb to weep, the mourners followed them. It was a sad, sad procession. Mary was weeping bitterly, and the others were crying with her. Then Mary caught sight of Jesus. Lord, she sobbed, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. I would even think of my imagination that she probably ran up to him and, being human as she is, and of course she knows who he is, I would see that she would kind of go like this, kind of hit him a little bit, because, somebody who's angry enough, they probably would. I mean, that's just me. Okay, let's get back. He didn't, uh, he did not try to explain. Where, where, where have you laid him? He asked gently. Come and see, she said. So they went to the tomb. Everybody was weeping now. Jesus cried too. The Bible said so in the two most precious words. Jesus wept. Yeah, there's two versions that go through with this. One I heard that he cried because of their disbelief, and then of course I heard that it was because Lazarus was his friend. So there's it really things can get really crazy wrapped up in these two little words. Jesus wept. Okay, let me see what he says. What Mr. Maxwell says. Let's get back to the story. Great tears rolled down the cheeks of the king of lovers as he cried in sympathy from the broken-hearted people. I see how he loved him. See how he loved him, some of the onlookers said. Yes, indeed. And they might have said, see how he loves everybody, for it was not for Mary and Martha alone that he wept that day, but for all who mourned in every age, young and old, rich and poor, in all the wide world. Those tears of Jesus tells us how much he cares for us. If you are feeling sad and lonely just now, think about them. They will comfort you, for he's the great His great heart of love is still touching with our griefs. Okay, his great heart is of love is still touched by our griefs. Okay. Coming to the tomb, which is a cave with a large stone rolled up in front of it, the mourners stood still, wondering what Jesus was going to do. Roll away the stone, he commanded. The mourners were horrified. Martha, ever practical, urged him not to do it. He has been dead for 4 days, she said, and she meant that his body had already begun to decay. Yeah, I've, my husband, I'll just leave it at that. Let me get back to the story. Perceiving their unbelief, Jesus answered with a note of authority in his voice. Did I not tell you that if you would believe, you would see the glory of God? The stone was taken away, and Jesus began to pray. Father, I thank thee that thou hast heard me, he said, as though he had been praying about this for some time. Then he went on, I knew that thou hast, thou hearest me always, but I have said this on account of the people standing by, that they may believe that thou didst send me. By this time, a great silence had fallen upon the crowd. Everyone had ceased sobbing. They all were anxious now. They were all now anxiously looking at Jesus. And then, of course, it's got a picture of the men rolling the stone away from the tomb down here at the bottom. And this is going to represent another thing. Um, you see how it is. Later on, we're going to read about Jesus' death. And, it actually had a seal on it. This one, nah, not so much. Had a seal on it. Or a wax seal, or it wasn't supposed to be broke. Okay. What was he planning to do? Suddenly, he got surely he was not going to try to bring a man back to life who had been dead for 4 days. Suddenly Jesus commanded, Lazarus, come out. All eyes turned towards the mouth of the cave. There was a rustling sound within. Somebody was moving about inside. Surely it could not be, but it was. A moment later, Lazarus appeared. He was he was a shocking sight. From a cloth, he was a shocking sight, for a cloth was wrapped about his face, his hands, his feet were still bound with the bandage that the undertakers wound around the dead in those days. How can he reach the mouth of the cave like that is a mystery, but there he was, and the people gasped in awe. Unbind him and let him go, said Jesus, and they did. Then what a precious scene took place. I imagine Lazarus threw his arms about Mary and Martha and kissed them. Then he shook hands with all his old friends who had never dreamed they would see him alive again. Maybe they felt maybe they felt him all over to make sure he was real. He was. Perhaps they asked him what it felt like to be dead, but he couldn't remember anything. I was just like being fast asleep, he told them. Thus did Jesus say, thus did Jesus again turn sorrow into joy, and tears into smile of happiness. By and by, Mary and Martha looked around to thank him for all he had done for them, but he was nowhere to be seen. He just walked quietly away. And then, yeah, it's a Hutchinson, and it's a two-pager, has a big yellow color, and of course it has the text in it. See how big and yellow it is. I mean, this is actually the real painting. So we got all the text in there. And then, of course, Lazarus looks like a mummy. Yeah, he's bound head and foot. And of course, that's going to be in there. That's in the original stories of the Bible, that he was bounded head and foot. And that also, that's how they did it. Okay. And of course, that's the end of part 1, story 4. Yeah, 4. So it's time for the break. So I'm going to break. And I know I keep looking up because there's some lights going on around outside. But we'll see what happens next. The more stories, they're getting interesting, especially when it's starting to get almost up to Calvary. We'll see.